Hello and welcome to Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on Megapix Media. Joining me today is Michael Holden, who is Vice President of Policy and Chief Economist with the Business Council of Alberta. Thanks for joining us today, Michael.
Thank you.
Well, you guys put out an interesting report today on the state of finances for the province of Alberta. Let me just start off by asking you, in a general sense, what can you tell me about the state of finances for this provinces currently and as we move forward?
Well, they're challenging. There's no question about it. And I think what we found in our study is that even pre-COVID, we're in a situation where the provincial government has spent more per capita than the other provinces and collected less revenue per capita. And so we've seen over the last 12 years a huge swing in our financial situation. And it's to the point where spending cuts alone aren't going to be enough for us to return to more balance down the road. And so our paper looks at what we can do on the revenue side to help address that.
Now, give me a sense of the debt, and do you have some numbers there for me?
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, in about 12 years ago, the province had a $50 billion net asset position after adjusting for inflation, and over that dozen years, we ended up in a situation where we've got a $40 billion deficit, or $40 billion debt rather, pre-COVID. And so COVID's going to add an additional 20 onto that. And so even if you ignore that, because that's a bit of a one-off emergency state, that's a swing of $90 billion in 12 years, which is huge. And it still doesn't put Alberta in a terrible position compared to other provinces. Like, I mean, our debt to GDP is not bad, but it's not the level that was concerning us, it's the trajectory. And so when we project forward, looking at factors like an aging population and the impact on healthcare spending and pressures to spend, and volatile and declining resource revenues over time, we need to take action now to avoid having to take more drastic action later.
Okay, super. Now, you came up with a couple of options, recommendations, obviously to boost that revenue. And the one that obviously everybody's going to be talking about today is the possibility of a sales tax, a provincial harmonized sales tax in a province. Tell me what your thoughts are on that and why you think that is an option now for Alberta that they have to really consider.
Well, I mean, I fully admit that raising this is not an option that's going to make me a lot of friends, but it's something that I think we have to at least seriously consider this. I mean, we've lived in a situation for decades now where the province has collected less revenue than it's spent, and we've used resources to paper over that gap. And we can't allow that to happen, and we can't allow that to persist in the future. And of the options that are available, in our view, sales tax is one of the best ones, for a few reasons. One is that it's the least economically disruptive. It won't impede growth down the road. It's very simple to administer, and in a sense, it's the exact opposite of resource revenues, where it is literally the most stable source of revenue the province could come up with. And a lot of the reason we're in this situation right now is because of that volatility in resource revenues. We've had, because every time there's an unexpected windfall, that creates pressure for the government to spend. And every time there's an unexpected shortfall, spending doesn't climb back down to adjust to the new revenue reality. And so over time, that's been the cause of why we end up spending more than we do in other provinces. And so having a sales tax in place will help eliminate a lot of those tendencies. It'll help put us on a more sustainable path. And depending on how we do a sales tax, it also opens up some other options for us. I mean, we could potentially, if we put in a relatively high sales tax, we could put in also a significant cut to personal income taxes as one option. We could reduce our dependence on resource royalties once and for all is another option. So we're going to be looking at those kinds of options further on down the road. But for right now, it's, what we really want to do is just, we need to start having a conversation about a sales tax. I mean, and it's the reality that we're in now, and we can't afford to live the way we had in the past.
Now, in terms of the revenue that could be generated from a sales tax, what kind of numbers are we looking at on an annual basis?
So as a general rule of thumb, you can expect about $1 billion in revenue per point of a harmonized sales tax. So 5% tax would net about $5 billion, 8% tax about $8 billion. And so those are kind of the rule of thumb that we've been working with. And so then, there's a question of how high do you need it to be, and what else can you do with it, like I said. And I think the other really important part to remember here too is that when we talk about introducing a sales tax, this isn't about a brand new revenue source for the province so that governments can go out and spend it on something. We need to take action on curbing spending in Alberta as well as increasing revenues. We have to do both of those things. And so where that mix is and what that balance is, that's work that we'll still be doing in the months ahead.
Okay, and the other key option that you've suggested is a reintroduction of the consumer carbon tax. Tell me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I mean, Albertans are paying a carbon tax anyway. It's right now. It's a matter of who's collecting it. So right now we're paying the federal carbon price, or carbon backstop rather. And with the federal carbon tax expected to go up to $170 a ton, this is a potentially huge new source of revenue for the province. I mean, at $50 a ton, it would get about $1.5 billion for the province. At $170, it could be about $6.5 billion. And so this, I mean, as it stands right now, a lot of that money is going towards rebates for households. And so that still may be the case down the road if the province repatriates this carbon tax, but it opens up some options for what we can do with that money if we keep it within Alberta to begin with.
Okay, last question. A lot of people would consider, especially the adoption of a sales tax, as political suicide for whatever government is in place. Do you think we're still at that level of thinking, or do you think we're moving beyond that?
Well, I would hope we're moving beyond it a little bit. It is difficult for any government to propose in Alberta a sales tax, for sure. And so I think that's part of the reason why we're doing this, is that, you know, somebody has to start these conversations. We need to recognize the fiscal situation we're in, and if a base of Albertans is opposed to this to the point where governments aren't comfortable to raise the subject, somebody has to do it, because it's the reality we live in. And so I think that what we see as our role in all of this is starting this conversation, laying the facts on the table and showing Albertans where we are and where we're headed. And we need to have these conversations, and hopefully that can soften the ground, and we can create convincing arguments and have Albertans see that this might actually be in our long-term best interests.
Okay, super. Thanks for joining us today, Michael.
Thank you.
Okay, that was Michael Holden, who is Vice President of Policy and Chief Economist with the Business Council of Alberta. This has been Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on Megapix Media. Thanks for joining us today.